Oh, come on. There we go. Now it's loading up. There we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mike Hatcher, State Chairman, the co-host Andi Jones for episode 45 of Tennessee USA Wrestling Power Hour Podcast, talking wrestling in the state of Tennessee specifically. But this one, this podcast actually might be good for everybody, I think, Andi, right?
I think so. I think so too, Mike.
If you're in Tennessee or whatever, but we'll get into that in a second, though. What's going on in your world, Andi?
We just went to the tournament at Ravenwood this week.
Thanksgiving week, by the way. Happy Thanksgiving week.
Happy Turkey Day.
That's right. Happy Turkey Day week.
We went to Ravenwood this past weekend. Had a good tournament. Yeah, I mean, you know how it goes. This is the beginning of the season, really, and so you're kind of having some harder matches than the first preseason matches, maybe, and now. So I have quite a few people kind of beat up at the moment, but such is wrestling, right? So
yeah, that's the way it works. Yeah, no, I'm happy to see you there. Everybody, just go ahead and point out the Tennessee USA Wrestling shirt that Andi's wearing. Was able to beat up with her, get some gear, give her some Tennessee gear. And
I complained enough that he hand delivered it.
Yeah, you already know. And plus, I watched some of my guys wrestle. We had some guys, obviously Ravenwood High School's a big supporter of what we got going. The Young Guns, they're doing a fantastic job. Their kids are getting tougher every week. Yeah, and we had some other kids.
Ran really well, by the way. Also,
Coach Beck.
A lot, they ran 8 mats on Saturday, and I think. Well, I can't remember what time I was leaving though. The girls finished up obviously a little bit earlier because matches tend to get a little faster at times, and plus there's more boys. So, but yeah, it was a really good tournament. So I'm happy.
I think they cranked it out. I think I left there at like 3:30, 4 o'clock, and it was
okay. Yeah.
It shocked me if it went past 5. So there are a lot of wrestlers there. 8 mats. So shout out to Coach Peck and his crew there, and getting a great tournament going through. And yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate them. That was.
I had a full day of wrestling Saturday. I did that. I went and watched the HVAC middle school tournament over at Brentwood Academy.
That's right.
Yeah. And what else did I do? Oh, Thursday I went and watched the Williamson County middle school championships. So yeah, a lot of my kids competing in those events last weekend. So it was actually a kind of a busy weekend of wrestling for me. So. Yeah.
With less pressure though, right? Less pressure on you.
No coaching whatsoever. Yeah. I just needed a little break. Right now I'm currently, like I said, I know if the sound doesn't sound as well, I'm in Miami right now. I did come down, spend every year. My family and I go on a fishing trip every year in Okeechobee, Florida. Hence right here, this is my rocking the Gerard tackle shop hat, Lake Okeechobee. So I usually come down. So we fished. This will be, I think, our 25th year in a row.
Oh wow!
Yeah, me and my dad have been on all 25. My brother's been on probably 22. My niece has been on good like 20. Some of them, whatever. But it's pretty much my mom. She comes like half the time. She's like, the other half. She's like, you guys go. So, but yeah. So we do that. We fish. So we usually fish on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and then Thanksgiving Day. That's kind of our Thanksgiving.
So do you eat the fish for Thanksgiving?
No, they're bass. We just catch them and release them.
Okay.
I'm not a big fisherman. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows. Everybody in my family knows. Yeah. Everybody knows I'm not a huge fisherman whatsoever. But my dad loves it. This is literally his Super Bowl. He loves it. My brother loves it. My niece actually loves it. My niece is actually really good. I hate to admit it, but yes, I'll go ahead and admit it here on the podcast. She usually outfishes everybody, and which isn't a big deal to me. I mean, it's a big deal to my brother and my dad, but I mean, to me, it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But
though these family trips like this, just like we in our parent meeting every year with wrestling, we talk about how there's drives to and for these things that we continually do annually. You're doing this with your parents and stuff. Like there's so many memories that are in there, even though you're not into fishing, you're into seeing your dad be thinking he's Bill Dance,
Well, we've literally had the same guide every year for 25 years. Yeah. Our guide, Larry, who's the best in Okeechobee. If you guys ever want to fish Lake Okeechobee, Larry Wright is your guy. He is the man down there. And yeah, we've literally done the same thing for 25 years. So I mean, Larry's like family to us now. I mean, he's like, we spend every Thanksgiving with him for the last 25 years. So it's pretty cool. But so now I've started a new tradition though. Well, I come down like last night. I got in late last night, and then I'm in Miami right now. So I stayed in Miami. So I'll go to the beach today, hang out for a little bit till about 3-4 o'clock, and then one of my assistant, I used to coach at Martin County High School, which is north of West Palm Beach, and so my assistant coach at the time, Coach Knopf, Don Knopf, my other assistant coach, Coach Raines, and Hank Raines, and then I've got a couple of my wrestlers and some guys that I used to teach with at Martin County High School. We all meet up for dinner on Tuesday night.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so I'll hang out at the beach today, which I'm, I got to get a little bit of me time in, so I can't be doing all fishing down here. So I hit the beach today a little bit, go meet them for dinner tonight, zip on over to Okeechobee because it's all like on the, I usually fly into Fort Lauderdale or Miami and then drive through there. So yeah. And then, so we'll do that and then fish tomorrow morning. That's how we do it. Some
sunshine, maybe not the sand of the beach, but the sunshine sounds really nice right now.
Yes. The sand of the beach. I've been already, I walked on the beach this morning. I'm totally dialed in. I'm good, and so, yeah, that's it. I'm ready to roll. But speaking of Thanksgiving, everybody knows that this is the time when especially if you're a wrestler, this could be a difficult time. It could be a difficult time of the year. Making weight. A lot of kids, some kids are competing on the weekend. Sometimes they have a tournament on Thanksgiving weekend, which is crazy to me. But
well, a lot of tournaments are this weekend because I believe it was leap year or something moved some things around. So where we normally give this weekend off, and there's a weekend off here.
It's crazy because this is like everybody thinks like wrestling is kind of a crazy psychotic sport, and it's always like the people that don't know wrestling or have never been involved in wrestling, they maybe have a kid that starts wrestling, or I've talked to, I don't even know how many like females I've talked to. Oh, my boyfriend used to wrestle back in the day, and he's like this cut weight all the time. There's always the cut weight part. Yeah. And then this is when it takes it like a whole other level, because the normal American obviously sits around at Thanksgiving, they eat, watch some football, eat some more, watch some football, take a nap, maybe eat some more. That's just the way. That's Thanksgiving where for wrestlers different. They got like a couple pieces of turkey, they get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and that's it. And then they probably worked out in the morning, probably work out in the afternoon. Some teams practice in the morning. I don't know. So, but yeah, so it's kind of this is what kind of takes the sport of wrestling to another level when it comes to really discipline and accountability. So.
Well, it's that self-control, right?
Absolutely.
I've got to do this. I have a goal, and this is a temptation. It's not necessary for my body. You know what I mean? Like for survival here, we all need to eat, but I don't need to eat the circle size plate. Food,
Yeah. It's this is an unusual time of the year, but the thing is, I don't think there could be a better time for us to bring our guests in and really have this type of discussion because. This is the nutrition side of it when it comes to, I think probably all sports in general, but obviously wrestling is our space and that's the way it is. But now it's like as good as competitive as our wrestling is getting, especially now at the middle school and high school levels. If you're not dialed into your nutrition, it's just, you're really leaving a lot on the table. It's just, so it's so important. You're setting yourself back so far because all the elite level guys they're doing things right. So it's one of those things where you better get yourself some good information right off the bat. You better get yourself a routine right away. Because if you're not doing that, I'm telling you right now, you're going to struggle against the kids and that's just the way it works. So, but
isn't it? When the kids are, I tell my athletes, you can choose to do all these things, but here's what you need to be doing, right? But the important thing to note is I can tell when you're not doing it right. I can tell when you are trying to not eat and trying to not do these things because you wrestle like garbage.
Well, absolutely. And this is one thing about wrestling is in anything in life, really, you control the controllables. Anything you can control the controllables. And then, you know what? What are you going to do? That's what you got. And this is one of the controllables in the sport of wrestling. This is one of the things that you 100% can stay dialed in with. That's gonna positively affect your performance. So if you can control this controllable, I'm telling you right now, you're going to be ahead of the game without question. And it's just
and only you can do it, right? No one can do this for you.
Absolutely, it's got to be you. It can't be a parent holding your hand. You're gonna have to take the lead on this and roll with it. So yeah, we're going to get our guest in here. We got one guest today, one guest only, because that's how much knowledge this dude has. But we're super, super fortunate as far as having a guy like this of his stature and his level in this industry that's willing to share his knowledge with us. So I'm going to bring him in the stage right now. There he is, my man right there, Marc Lobliner.
What's going on?
What's going on? How we doing?
Man, I can't believe you're fishing. I can't do the fishing thing. I can't do just you're sitting there. Man, we went deep sea fishing we went on a hiking trip in the Northeast. And look, man, Thomas, he's a wrestler. He could put up with it, man. I was like, I'm out. Preston was napping. It was bad. Like everybody threw up. The deep sea thing, I don't know. I don't have the stomach for it. Yeah, I can't do fishing. I need more. Like the fly fishing thing seems like I could do it though.
Yeah, I'm similar, but you know, as a parent, you know, I mean, you might have some interests that may not necessarily be Thomas and Preston's interests, but
yeah,
you know, when they do it with you just because it's your interest, that's got to make you feel good.
Yeah,
so
we lasted. It was 6 a.m. to like noon. Finally, Thomas had to tap out.
That's the thing that always gets me. It's like it's always like, okay, wait, what time we got to be there in the morning? What time we leave in the morning? 5:30, 5:45. I mean, it's just like, really? The fish aren't going to be biting like at like 2.
We had to be there. You know, we had to be at the dock at like 5:45. I'm like, really? This is vacation.
I know. But crazy.
Yeah. We caught a couple sharks. It was actually really cool. It made for good pictures. But when we got back to land, I was still like moving. Like I felt like I was still on the boat.
That's the deep sea one right there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think
lake fishing.
Lake fishing's fine. Deep sea, I'm not your guy. Like I'm just not the guy. I did my best though. I did my duty as a dad. And I stood out there and I paid a bunch of money to go. So it was fun.
When I get on a boat in the middle of the ocean, I want to go with a sandbar. I want to go where people are hanging out. And and there's you got some adult drinks in the bar. That's the type of boat ride I like.
Yeah, that wasn't
fish. I mean,
this wasn't that.
Come on, what are you doing here?
There's fish guts all over the place. Like there was a lot of reasons to induce vomiting, and that was that added to it. And the toilet was broken. Not going to go there.
Oh boy.
So there was a lot going on. Of course, we get out there, and my 11-year-old Preston's like, I got to poop. I'm like, oh no. So it's just sitting there in the toilet the whole time. The smells from. Yeah, it was a hell of an experience. Yeah, hell of an experience.
Well, like I said, Marc, thanks so much for jumping on here. This is really. I mean, those of you that understand. I mean, Marc literally. I mean, this is right up his alley because this dude is on podcast after podcast. People when they look for somebody in the fitness and nutrition industry to have on their podcast, and that knows their stuff. Marc's on all the big ones. So
I'm the lowest cost option. You know,
is that right?
Yeah, I'm the Walmart of fitness experts. You know, you don't want me on there. It's just it's a wise financial decision.
yeah. I think
the other guys charge too much. Yeah.
I think there's more to it there. But like I said, we're super excited to have you on here. And like I said, I mean, this is just an area of our sport that's so important. It really
it is.
And any sports in general. The nutrition side is something that's, very, very, very much neglected. So, yes. Marc, a little bit about yourself, background as far as what you do, what you're doing, what you're currently doing, your nutrition background, everything. Lay it out. Not everything. If it's everything, we'd be here for 3 hours.
Number one that applies to this community, we have a facility. You heard on this podcast before with Brody Malzoni. We have Legacy at Carbon, we're a youth performance facility. We coach everybody from the Page's football team, which, by the way, 2 more games, they got a state title. I think we got a good shot. We have Page basketball, Indy girls lacrosse. We have a bunch of Centennial baseball, a bunch of teams under our belt.
Wrestling, right?
Nolensville Wrestling. So amazing group of athletes. And which is funny because my son wrestles for Ravenwood. So I have a plan. I'm going to stand on Nolensville side and I'm going to creep over to the Ravenwood side and my son wrestles. And I think everybody will be okay with that decision. but we ride with our posse. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's what I do locally. We coach, we have evening classes, and in the summer, of course, we'll have morning classes. This week we're there 2 and 3 p.m. every day, but Thanksgiving. So youth performance, anybody from young kids, middle school on up to high school. We have a couple guys in the NFL. We got some people in D1 college athletics across the board, from wrestling, Jeremiah Rains, who went to BGA, to a bunch of kids in multiple sports in college. How I actually make money. If you didn't know, guys, youth sports, not a millionaire sport, not a millionaire job. It just isn't.
What?
So, no. I hate to break it to you guys, but you might want to look at moonlighting somewhere. So I own a company called tigerfitness.com. We are a nutritional supplement retailer. Also own a company called MTS Nutrition. I have a company called Ambrosia, which has the #1 plant protein and vitamin shop. GNC, available at all Sprouts locations, called Planta. So that's my brand. We also have the Outright Bar, which is available nationwide. And there's a couple other things I might be missing, but those are the main things that I do.
And I will put a plug in here. I tell you what, all those products that he just mentioned are amazing. They're incredible. They are incredible. I mean,
and Black Friday sales. Black Friday sales hit this weekend, by the way, at tigerfitness.com. Yeah.
There we go.
But it's not your 10-week long Black Fridays. We're actually starting it on Black Friday because we're old school like that.
That's right, old school.
Yeah, but if you're ever at Sprouts, everybody goes to Sprouts. There's one right up there on Murfreesboro Road. You got Planta Plant Protein, where they're #1 plant protein now. We're kicking butt. So that's part of what I do. But yeah, I have a day job, but I try to spend as much time as possible. We have Coach Bryce, obviously, at Legacy, holds it down. He's the best coach ever. Like there's no better coach in the country at coaching youth athletes. His knowledge and how he connects with children is just beyond anything you can describe. So, I mean, those kids love him, and it's great to be around that atmosphere. We'll have kids from 7, 8, 9 different schools at a time, pushing each other, getting better. These are kids who might meet each other on the mat or might meet each other on the football field, trying to take each other's heads off. But either way, when you're at Legacy, it's Legacy versus everybody.
That's right. You know what? It's kind of a strength fitness performance version of Young Guns Nashville.
Yeah. We're more of
you get kids that are super competitive in there, and they're training together and getting each other better. You know what? They might meet in the state finals. They might meet in the state. And I want to see that. I've seen it. I saw it this year when Centennial played Page. Yeah. Like we have multiple kids from both of those high schools going against each other, and but we coached Page's entire team, so that's why they won. So I just say, hey, I'm a numbers guy. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. Yeah, I love it.
But yeah, it's rewarding, and my wife and I do this. Like we're never going to take money from it. Like all the money goes back into the program and to Coach Bryce and to growing it. So this is a passion project. I have many years of education in not only nutrition. I'm also a professional bodybuilder on the side, but nutrition, but training, as far as different methodologies, EXOS, etc. We use many different methodologies, but my goal, I feel my calling on earth, God's calling for me, is to coach athletes. But he made me pretty good at business to be able to not make money coaching athletes, because it's a huge undertaking. And as you can tell, like, it's not scalable. For those of you who know business, for those who want to learn business, like, you have a facility and you can only train kids when they're out of school. So you have about 3 hours a day. You have limited space. So it's not a scalable industry. It's not a scalable opportunity. So the goal is just to make sure, our goal is to make this more football than wrestling, but maybe a little wrestling. It might have to change states to Iowa. We want tennis. We want Williamson County, the entire county, to be the Texas of Tennessee, meaning that I want every football team in Williamson County to be able to compete against the top football teams in Texas. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge undertaking. We're about 5 years away, but we'll get there. And what they have above us is culture, and they're just bigger, stronger, and faster. Yeah. So I think we can mitigate that. We got monsters like Eric Hazard just representing. He's going to Louisville after this season, literally right after he's graduating early. So he's going to be on the team for their bowl game. So it's just really exciting to be able to see that kind of fostering, developing, and nurturing this community like you've done. Like, you brought wrestling, what we needed here. You brought Cleveland-esque wrestling to Middle Tennessee. And there's no reason why we can't be a dominant force in all sports. We have the resources, we have the talent. We just need to nurture those athletes and get them to that next level. And as someone who doesn't plan on leaving, I want to live here my entire life. I love it here. I want to make sure that we give these kids an opportunity to compete and to win and to learn those values to carry them through the rest of their life.
Amen. And that's why, like I said, I like operating closely with this guy, because I tell you what, same goals, we have the same. It was crazy because I remember, and we'll start getting the nutrition side here in a second here, but it was funny because, a good buddy of mine, Josh Boskin, who runs the Cleveland Wrestling Club now, obviously he said, hey, you got to meet this guy. He lives in your area right now, blah, 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 blah. So just turned out Mark sent his kids over, to start wrestling Young Guns National. I said, we're like, you know what? You need to sit down and grab lunch, man. Just chop it up a little bit. And it was literally like I just met my brother.
we were separated at birth.
You got what's your?
Now you'll have matching tattoos.
Oh, what's your vitamin supplement? What vitamin supplements do you have? Oh, it takes you forever to get through the TSA line at the.
It was weird because you're the only person as neurotic as I am. So my wife was like, "This is weird." Like,
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a unique bond we had. We didn't even know we have. I think that a lot of it comes from as you get older, a lot of people just let themselves go, and that's understandable. You have responsibilities, you have kids, you have a 9-to-5, you have a lot going on. But, I think that, both you and I don't want to lose the ability to do things that we did at a younger age. And we also don't want to die. So I think those are factors that play in. And I just think that we have the knowledge to do it. And also with coaching kids, you want to be able to get on the mat, move with them and show them those moves. And by doing what you do, you're able to do that. And I always like to lead by example. And I'm not going to ask an athlete to do something that I couldn't do. Maybe not as good as them, but I can at least demonstrate it. How are you going to demonstrate something if you can't do it yourself? Exactly. So that's one of the reasons. And coaching keeps you young. You're in there and you got monsters like, again, the Page kids like Eric and Sean and those guys. Like, you got to be able to keep up. Have you ever spotted somebody squatting 500 pounds?
Exactly.
I got to be able.
There's a reason for
all
that.
the time.
Well, here's the problem, dude. They're like 6'5". I'm like 5 foot. They're like a foot taller than me, and I'm like, how do I even spot this? But yeah, it's very rewarding. And wrestling, as we get into wrestling and what wrestling entails, you're looking at a sport that almost encourages eating disorder like behavior.
Yes.
And historically speaking,
I think that's a segue into what we got going today. So go ahead.
I'm a professional here.
I love it.
So as my kids got into wrestling, and I'm just looking around, and my kids usually wrestle around the weight that they're supposed to be at, right? Like, I'm not going to make a 120 drop down to 106 or a 150 drop down. And I've seen that a lot. But what you see is unhealthy habits that kids tend to pick up because food's good and they like eating it, but they also want to wrestle at a class that gives them an advantage where they can actually compete and win. So what you'll see is these kids will get ready for the tournament. You see this in bodybuilding a lot post-contest. You see binges, people gaining 20. I've seen kids gain, since I've been here, not big kids. Like if a 200-pounder gains 20 pounds, whatever, that's 10% of their body weight. I've seen 106-pounders gain 20 pounds and then have to drop back in a week to get back down to 106. Mm-hmm. You've probably seen it more than I have.
Oh, yeah.
And you just see, you run the gamut of things of not only this dangerous eating disorders that we need to look at what can really happen. So in males, it can stunt your pubescent growth. It can stunt your testosterone and all your hormonal development. In females, it could cause long-term effects because you're born with the eggs that you have, like it's always there. So it can cause things like amenorrhea, which is the loss of menstruation, loss of period. And it can also cause thyroid disorders and a plethora of other issues, upwards of nutrient deficiencies, hair loss, skin issues. It's the issues you can have with disordered eating, which we're talking about because it's the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about in wrestling. But you're fostering, if done incorrectly, you're fostering a situation where kids are putting their health at risk to make these weights. And I think it's especially important in female wrestlers because female wrestling, especially in Middle Tennessee, it's a fast growing sport, but they're new to it. So with females, I believe, in my experience, I have no data to back this up, the long-term, it's harder to get rid of the problems you cause. Whereas it seems like men bounce back. Like thyroid issues in men, you don't see them often. In women, it's much more predominant. It's much more likely to happen. So what we need to do is foster staying within 5 to 10 pounds of your wrestling weight. I think that's something we need to understand. And also I found the hydration test, the water test, the descent. I find that actually makes things a little bit worse. I find it has even more neurotic issues with it, with the weight descent. Basically, there's no way to do this healthy. You can piss in a cup and see if it's clear or not. That's not going to tell you the entire story, because there's ways to drop down even lower. Make sure you're hydrated. Drink about a pound worth of water before the test, and you'll be peeing clear. So there's ways around it, and kids are smart. They'll figure it's deductive reasoning. How do I make my pee clear? I drink a lot. Okay, so if I'm supposed to see 118 this day to hit my weight descent and have my urine test out that I'm not dehydrated, then I'm going to drop down to 116, drink this water. There's ways around it, right? It's like, if you've seen the Balco story on Netflix, it's like passing a steroid test, right?
I mean, when they started this ascension plan, I mean, they started it. I mean, shoot, it was, I don't even know how many years ago it was started. I mean, I couldn't even imagine like the amount of kids that, let's just say it, cheated the test. I mean, it's like, they're going to figure it out. Here's the deal. At the end of the day, I mean, weight cutting is going to be, as long as you keep giving a gold medal out, there's going to be kids that cut weight. And that's just the way it works. The only way to eliminate it, there's two ways to eliminate it. One, stop rewarding them, stop giving medals out. And two, do mat side weigh-ins. But they're still going to figure out a system to do like mat side. I mean, as soon as they step on a scale, they go wrestle right off to get that scale. That would be the only other way to do it. But they'll figure something out there to get an advantage. You're always going to get, as long as you're giving a gold medal out, they're always going to give an advantage.
I was going to say that as long as they have, I think the idea of the hydration testing initially was great, but as we know, like you're holding a machine that calibrates your body fat percentage, which we also know is not very accurate.
It's horribly inaccurate. Like going back to bodybuilding and natural bodybuilding, they used to do polygraphs. Well, it's not that hard to pass a polygraph. So if someone wants to cheat, they're going to cheat. It just is what it is. But I will say that they had the best of intentions, right?
It's better than, I'll tell you right now, it's better than the system they had before.
Yeah, bureaucrats always. Bureaucrats
doing.
Bureaucrats usually have the best of intentions. They just they're point A thinkers. They don't think about point B. Right. And that's okay. And that's why, we did flush things out and discuss these things. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have the weight dissension test. I'm not saying we shouldn't have it. I'm saying that, look, I've seen it lead to even more destructive behaviors. Right. So one thing we can do as coaches is we need to educate these kids on proper nutrition, and doing it this way will actually negatively impact their performance. And the way to do that is by maintaining and controlling your weight through proper caloric intake and restrictions. So if I need to get to 113, there's ways to do that where you're actually going to lose body fat, more or less. You're going to lose some muscle. No matter how you do it, you're going to lose some muscle. But how do you do it in a healthy manner? You perform at your best. Mm-hmm. And when you're dehydrated, your performance drops incrementally. And it takes time to get dehydrated, to get rehydrated. So unless you're literally getting an IV in you right before a match, because weigh-ins are usually the morning of, there's no way you're going to be wrestling at your top performance. So the goal is to be at your weight, be hydrated, and then wrestle, but still make your weight. And if that means going up a weight class, that means going up a weight class. There's a boxing coach, I had his name on the tip of my tongue, who actually took, I think, two boxers who were above average and made them into world champion boxers by simply having them box at their weight class. Yeah. They didn't cut the weight. Everybody thinks you're going to be better, lighter. If you're let's say a 113, let's take my son's weight class. Let's say you're a natural 120, but you cut to 113 because maybe the coach didn't have a spot for you at 120. There were two guys at 120. Someone had to bite the bullet. Someone had to drop down. If you're wrestling at 113, but you're 60% of what you are at 120, I'm going to argue you'll do better at a 120 weight class. And that matters in duels. But when it comes to individuals, you can have multiple 120s. So there's something to look at. I want to see kids learn how to do this correctly. You have kids with plenty of body fat to be able to do the weight descent and hit their weight without negatively affecting their dehydration and pulling this last minute stuff. but they'll do it anyway because, you know, donuts are good. Like after these matches, you know, they're just binging. And we need to educate kids on not doing that. You know, in concession stand food, I've seen people barely make weight in between matches. They're getting the nachos from the concession stand.
That's crazy.
Look, man, support your local school. The concessions lead to a lot of fundraising for these organizations. Like Ravenwood raised a ton of money. My wife ran that. You know, they raised a ton of money on the concessions. But as a wrestler, you should be packing your meals. Yeah. You should have your meals with you. You shouldn't be relying on concession stand chips and donuts and Krispy Kremes and Chick-fil-A to get you through the day. Also, Hatcher, you can kind of relate to this. You perform better when you eat better.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Who's going to perform better? Someone who just had a greasy sandwich or someone who fueled themselves with proper nutrition? And we get into what proper nutrition is. I mean, it's pretty simple. On the meat day, you got to look at, first of all, it's very individual. What agrees with your stomach? What do you do best with? What do you feel works best? There's nothing wrong with peanut butter jelly sandwiches. Right. It's got healthy fats. It's got some bread for carbs. It's got some carbohydrate from the jelly. I'm not worried about protein intake, and we get into protein intake in a little bit, but the day of the matches, I'm not worried about you being in an anabolic state, which means that you can build muscle. I'm worried about you fueling your body. And you know, fat and carbohydrate are there, but you also, that doesn't mean greasy food. That means things like peanut butter. That means maybe even trail mix, granola, things like that are easy, that are convenient, that are not going to weigh you down, because the last thing in a match is you want to feel that heavy stomach. Exactly. You also don't want to eat till you're full. Eat till you're just satiated enough where you can have that energy to go into the match, to wrestle cleanly, to not. I saw 3 people puke in the last 2 meets I've been to. And it's because they thought their match was at, like, the match was earlier because they moved things around, you know, wrestling. And so a couple kids puked. But if they were eating correctly for match day, that wouldn't be an issue. And you know, even with my own son, I'm constantly reminding him, hey, is that a good choice? Is that the right choice? Are you going to wrestle good on that? Are you going to feel good on that? So I think that the match day, you know, meet day, you know, it's about fueling your performance with just enough carbohydrate and fat, and avoid greasy things that'll weigh you down. I'm not a fan of potato chips, not a fan of eating Ruffles and Lay's, but again, healthy options, bananas, apples, the stuff that your mom tells you eat is usually the right option. Just listen to your mom, because she's going to be like, why? Look, at the end of the day, your wrestlers are, whether you're the worst kid on the team or the best kid, I consider you an elite athlete. Combat sports, as a guy who boxed for a few years of my life, combat sports, wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, whatever, they're the hardest sports. And you, just by doing that sport, just by competing in it, even if you lose, you're an elite athlete. So you need to start feeding yourself like you're an elite athlete.
We, something that we've been doing a little different, because my girls, you know, a lot of these girls are first timers to the sport whenever they get to me. Yeah. And so I noticed the garbage that they were bringing. And it is garbage. And once again, like the whole saying, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yep.
So something, our parent group, so this is maybe an idea for some of the other people out there listening, is our parent group got together and they make a schedule. I made a list of things, options that are healthier options for the tournament day. And then the parents sign up to bring it. So then one parent does the sandwiches, you know, things like that. So there's ways of preparing as a group as well, right? Because there's some kids that, you know, they don't have somebody to take them to do all of that, to pregame their meals as much. So,
and wrestling is also placed almost hysterically. Like football, you could place during the holidays. Like Thanksgiving dinner is the day before Paige's football game. Ain't nobody weighing in. Right. Wrestling, like they're expected sometimes, like you were talking about earlier, to wrestle on Thanksgiving weekend. We're in West Creek has a tournament this weekend. We're going to be So you look at when it is. It's during the worst times of the year, Christmas and friggin' Thanksgiving. It's like, was somebody like, is somebody playing a joke? But then they give you that. And can someone explain to me the 2 pound allowance after Christmas? Why not just start that? So
that's what drives me.
It's ridiculous.
The 2 pound allowance is just, I mean,
what is this?
Because we see a lot of kids that go down because they call it a growth allowance because they think that these kids are going to grow 2 pounds bigger in the next 4 months, which I don't know what the data behind that is, but maybe there's some, I don't know. But all you're doing is you're just giving a revolving door for these kids. Okay, I'm going to start at 113, and then after Christmas, I'm going to drop down to 108. So they win a state championship at 106 when they don't ever even weighed 106 in the first place.
Well, they were like Thomas. Yeah. He's wrestling 120, and then when they give that 2 pound allowance, he's dropping down to 115. 5 pounds. I mean, I could lose 5 pounds in an hour. Yeah. Like, it's not that hard. And for kids if you're struggling to make weight, you did everything wrong. And the key is controlling your diet and your weight. And a lot of it comes down to healthy food choices. Look, man, these kids are just getting fast food every day. They're eating junk food. And then they're like, oh no, I gained 12 pounds and I have a meet in 2 days. Then they starve themselves and they put themselves through all this pressure just to get to that weight. Then they always barely make it, which is freaking amazing. I mean, it's astounding. It's like, no way is that kid making weight. And then he's like, how? Like last week, he was literally obese. And now he looks like he has eaten him.
Yeah, then they go out and their body just falls to crap and like halfway through the match. And this is always a rule of thumb that we have. And this is when I have this talk with our young guns kids every fall, make sure they understand that this is, if you want to be an elite wrestler, I mean, this is what your day should look like. This is what your week should look like. If you're a 113 pounder, let's say, for example, you weigh in at 113, an hour later, in an hour weigh in, let's say after rehydrate, after you have a little bit of bite to eat, all that type of stuff, and maybe 2 hour weigh in, whether it's a tournament or not. Let's say, for example, you're 113, you weigh 113, and after all of that, you step on the mat, or you start your warm up, and then we're getting ready to step in the mat at let's just say 17.
Mm-hmm.
If that's where you're at. If you deviate, if you put 4 pounds on after that weigh-in, then that 117 weight class, that 117, that you need to be at practice there every single day. Yep. That's where you need to be at practicing. So you need to come into practice at 117. You should probably lose 3 whatever pounds or 4 pounds or whatever and get down to and after the end of practice. Yep. You don't come in any higher than, let's just say, 117 and a half, 118. That's it every single day, because your body doesn't know whether it's wrestling in a match, whether it's wrestling in a dual meet, whether it's wrestling in practice. It doesn't matter. You've got to start adjusting your body there. So what's going to kill you is that you're a 113 pounder. You come into practice every week or every day of the week at 121. And then all of a sudden you make weight at 113, and now you only weigh 116, 117 on by the time you step in the match. And now you got from 117 to 121. Your body's like, well, wait a second here. Deal with this. So you got to trick your body. You got to get your body, and that's very, very easy. All you got to do is just find what you rehydrated up to, what your competition weight is, and that's what you come into practice every day. And the best wrestlers out there, they are, for lack of a better word, obsessive about their weight. They know they come in for a morning workout. If it's an hour lift, an hour run, an hour drill, or whatever they're doing in the morning for their hour workout, they know that they come in there and they know how much they weigh in before they work out, they weigh in after they work out. So they know in that hour morning workout, they're going to lose 1 pound or a pound and a half, or whatever they would. And they do the same. They come back for practice. They weigh in before practice, and then they weigh in after practice. Okay, well, for an hour and a half practice, hour and a half wrestling practice, I get 3 pounds off. They always know what they can get off during those particular workouts, and that's just the way it works. Every wrestler does. It's crazy to me, like how I'll have so many kids that come in and literally they don't check their weight ever. it's like well, how do you know what you're losing in practice? And then they're like, okay, well, coach, if I got to come into practice at 117 and I weigh 122 right now, I mean, what do I do? Cut weight down to 117, and then I can start coming to 117. I got cut. No, that's not what you do. You start implementing the things that Marc was just talking about as far as proper nutrition and bringing it down gradually. Maybe you're 3 weeks away from hitting that 117. I'm just using that as an example. That 117 pound weight every single time you come into the practice room, but that's just the way it works. You're 2-3 weeks away from doing that. So now you start doing that method consistently. Then at the end of the season, your body's already like, man, this is easy money right here. Now you can start eating more, even you can start drinking more because your body's just used to it, and you basically just change the structure of your body for that. So that's what all the best D1 kids do. Mm-hmm. All the world level guys do. They are very, very, very conscious of what they come into practice at, what their weight is, what they can get off during that particular practice and training session, and what they're weighing out afterwards. And they come in there, and it's a consistent thing.
I think so much of it is getting these kids, because I think we all kind of, my background, I'm an exercise physio, if you don't.
There you go.
So anyway, I preach a lot of this over and over to the girls. And, of course, like when we're doing preseason and things like that, we're going to have natural weight decline, right? And so we're watching that. But it's another thing, or what we've been really, really focusing on is getting them to understand that you're making these healthy choices. If you just go ahead and fuel your body right now, when the weights don't matter, especially fuel it with the healthy things, it'll get used to having that, and it will get used to you. We haven't evolved too much from cavemen, right? Like as far as how the body functions. And so, and the importance of how much dehydration affects your performance. Mm-hmm. And I think the two of those things, staying level and understanding that, even if you're these kids that cut 5 pounds of water weight or so, you're just like, you weigh 126. That's not right.
Once you get your system down, this is the thing that kids don't understand, is that once you get your system down,
it's easier.
It's actually the kids that you would think like a 120, like I've been talking about the best kids in the country.
Yeah.
120, 126, 113, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And you look at those kids, you're like, how in the world does that kid make 120? It's easier for that kid to make 120 than it is for another kids to make 120, 126, because they're very, very disciplined about what they put in their body. They're very, very structured. They know what they're coming in to practice at. They know what they're leaving at. They're just dialed in. They know where it's at. Even like when we were at Cal Poly, we used to have a chart right over the scale every day. And the kids wouldn't, if they're, whatever weight class they're at, if they're a 150 pounder, okay, all right, I should be coming in at this right here on day one, this day. And that was just what they followed it. And that's just the way it works,
Yeah. The thing is, a lot of coaches just aren't knowledgeable of it, or they came, they're doing a service. Like these wrestling coaches aren't getting paid millions of dollars. So this is not to slight them in the least, but they're great wrestling coaches. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to weight descent, a lot of them are still preaching the stuff they did in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
Which is, football is the same way with strength. It is what it is. Like, you're a specialist at what you do. Mm-hmm. They're not a specialist at safely dropping weight and maintaining muscle. And that's another thing you have to focus on, is the strength component. So a lot of kids wrestle, but you need to have some strength component, because at the end of the day, wrestling does utilize some strength, right? You're pushing someone, pulling someone. But if you add resistance training in during the season, I'm talking 2 days a week, basic lifts, that will help preserve the muscle, because you're going to lose muscle during the season, especially if you're doing the weight descent, weight cutting, this, that, and the third. So towards the end of the season, what I see happening is kids who are losing at the beginning start winning. Now I'm talking close matches. And that's another thing. When you look at diet, you look at, what if a lot of the close matches, like the close ones, are decided by 1 to 3 points.
Oh yeah.
The question to ask yourself, did that dehydration, did that cause me to give up that takedown, to give up that reversal? Could I have been 2% better? Is a matter of winning or losing once you get to the tougher matches. And I've seen that personally with my kids, and it's like, you had about 2% on you. Was that 2% something you could have controlled? You could have prevented. So I think that, but resistance training, a lot of wrestling programs, there's a coach, I'm not going to name him, who doesn't let his kids lift during the season. Wow. And I'm like, okay, you're insane. You're out of your mind. Yeah. I'm not telling you to go do a Ronnie Coleman, 800-pound squat workout. I'm telling you 2 days a week, dedicate 20 to 30 minutes in the weight room, just stimulate the muscle to prevent that atrophy. Atrophy is muscle loss. Yes. That'll happen inevitably because you're in a cardiovascular dominant sport. You're literally, it's the equivalent of running, every practice is running a marathon. You're going for an hour and a half to 2 hours of drilling and live. Mm-hmm. You're burning thousands of calories. There's no way you're going to stave off muscle. So one thing is, keep your protein intake adequate, unless on match day, right? Match day, I don't care. Just fuel yourself and win. But, you're looking at a gram of protein per pound of body weight. You say, what about kids? Even more important, kids are actually growing. Like, it's not like old farts like us, right? Like, even then I'd recommend a gram per pound. So that means if you weigh 100 pounds, eat 100 grams of protein. And just put in perspective, one chicken breast is like 42 grams. Like a 6-ounce chicken breast is 42 grams of protein.
Yeah.
For some of these, unless, for most wrestlers, you're 150 and under, then of course you got the bigger classes. It's literally 3 chicken breasts. It's not that big of a deal, guys. That's 2 trips to Chipotle with double chicken, of course. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. But the thing is, if you watch kids' eating patterns, it's junk. It's crap. And but here's the thing. You're a wrestler. I don't care if you're a top guy. I don't care if you're a guy going to PNL or you're a guy who just wrestles in high school team for 4 months a year. At the end of the day, you're a wrestler. Start treating yourself as an elite athlete, because you are an elite athlete by simply getting on the mat and risking getting pinned in front of all your friends and probably your girlfriend. It is the most humanizing, humiliating sport you could be a part of. So start treating yourself like you're doing something awesome, because you're better than that. And I don't want you looking back when you're my age, say, man, if only I knew about nutrition, I would have, I could have gone to regionals. I could have gone to state. I could have placed. And that's the thing. You want to remove those variables. So when you're my age, trust me, this will happen. Okay. When you're my age, you can't look back, say, what if? Eliminate all those variables. And I guarantee you this, you're going to feel better. You're going to wrestle better. You're not going to have to suffer through the weight descent. I think that that's just the best way to do things.
You brought up the fact that 3 chicken breasts could literally, you could give them their daily, protein intake. What are some other great options as far as just proteins in general? Let's just start with proteins in general right now. And here's the thing: I don't even wrestling is, and this is just my opinion on it, but it'd be hard to change my opinion on it. Wrestling is getting so competitive at not only the high school level but the middle school level now, to where, in my opinion, there's really no in-season eating plans or out of season.
It's year round. It's year round.
This needs to be a lifestyle for you.
Yes.
Because it most certainly is a lifestyle for the guys that the elite athletes of high school wrestling. The elite ones, they don't, season starting, so I'm going to start eating clean now. No, they're usually eating clean because honestly, their off-season tournaments are much, much, much tougher than their in-season tournaments. So they have to be
goodness.
Yeah. I mean, if they're in the P&L, or if they're doing Super 32, they're doing the USA circuit, they're doing whatever, those tournaments are 10 times tougher.
Absolutely.
Than tournaments. So what are some healthy options? Every now and then, obviously, when they're done in whatever, Fargo's at the middle of July, they're done there. They've got about maybe 3 weeks off or whatever. Before they start
that's it.
Okay. Be a high school kid, go for it, man. Go and hang out with your buddies at Steak and Shake and stuff. But you mentioned the chicken. What other type of, let's just start with protein intake right here as far as an eating lifestyle. What else is really good for kids?
So, I'm not going to sales pitch it. Let me be easy. Those Core Powers, they have 42 grams of protein. They sell them at Sam's Club. Yeah. It's 42 grams. It's just a shake. It tastes pretty good. It's ready to drink. Okay, cool. There's protein powders. That's something. But let's get into food. Yeah. Greek yogurt, any kind of steak, any meat, of course, is going to be average about it's about 7 grams of protein per ounce of meat. That's usually how, obviously, give and take. Ribeye is going to be different than sirloin, but that's the rule of thumb: 7 grams per ounce.
Okay, let me stop you real quick there, Mark, because you sell both plant-based and regular whey protein, that type of stuff. So, what's your stance on? Obviously, because I get this question a lot. Is it if my son's a vegan, or if he's whatever, is that going to hurt him?
No. The main issue with plant-based or vegan diets is they don't get enough proteins, number one. So we have Ambrosia planta we added the free-form amino acids to make the profile more close to an animal-based protein. But the reason, the application for that is a lot of kids are just sensitive to dairy and lactose. A lot of humans are. So that's where I see the application for that. Whey protein is actually the most biologically available, which your body uses the most of it per gram. So it's the most usable. Some people do have lactose issues. So whey protein would be the gold standard. However, again, this is just a fact. Like our plant protein is comparable to whey. So that would be the application. But generally speaking, most people agree with whey protein. Mm-hmm. It's usually with plant, it's delicious, but plant protein, if you go and buy Vega from the store, it tastes like crap. So no kid, like, okay, wrestlers, maybe like my son would probably do it if I told him to. Most kids, I'm not drinking that. It tastes terrible. Yeah. So you need something that tastes good. So find something that tastes good. I have options. There's options out there. I don't own Core Power. It's just easy. It's decently tasty and it's decent quality protein. It's not the best, but it's protein. Yeah. At the end of the day, beef jerky, there's another one. Obviously in season, you have to be careful with the sodium and water retention. That's another thing. Don't cut sodium. A lot of kids will think sodium. No. You know how much you sweat in wrestling? The necessity for, if you don't have enough sodium, your muscles are literally not going to function. Your muscles can't contract without sodium and magnesium. So you need to have sodium in your diet. Don't watch salt. Like it's like, oh, this has 480 milligrams of sodium. It's like, good. You probably need grams of that. The amount of liquid you're drinking, the amount of training you're doing, the amount of perspiration you're generating, you're going to need sodium in your diet. So there's so many protein options, from beef jerky sticks to protein bars to protein shakes to Greek yogurt to meat. I mean, just basically make protein the center of three or four of your meals a day and you're good to go. Right.
So like say, for example, if I do have some questions like on the vegan side of it. Like say, for example, somebody is a vegan. I mean, is there one, this is always my answer when they ask me, well, is it better or worse if they go if the kid's son or daughter goes plant-based as compared to meat? Because some people are against meat. Whatever. That's my thing is, listen, eat whatever you want. I'm not, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm a meat eater. If you're a vegetarian, a vegan, whatever, then go for whatever you need to do. What's your stance on that?
So veganism, no matter how you slice it, is not optimal. You're lacking certain things like DHA, EPA, which you get from alpha-linoleic acid, which are fish oil basically. And it's also found in beef and other protein and other, omega-3s. And alpha-linoleic acid just simply doesn't convert to DHA and EPA. It's like 0.5% to 3% conversion. So you're just not going to get enough of that. There's no way to be optimal as a vegan, but things you want to look at are B12. There are algae sources. I think I don't know where you can buy them, but there are algae sources for DHA, EPA you can get now. What else? I know I believe vitamin D is an issue. I believe zinc's there's a lot of issues with vegan diets. Yeah. And that's why in our plant protein, we add in the vitamins and minerals. Okay. But look, can you thrive and really live a good life as a vegan? Yes. Is it as good or optimal for performance like a meat inclusive or animal inclusive diet? And based on my interpretation of the data, which I've read thousands of studies, it's just not. Right. I mean, it's not better. It might be, you might think you're saving the earth. I'm not going to make that argument here. That's cool. But again, just know that it is not the optimal way to live as an athlete. Right. You can live a very healthy, very amazing, you could compete at a high level being a vegan, but you're not going to be as good as you would have been if you included meat in your diet. That's my stance on it. And if you disagree, that's fine. This is based on my interpretation. Right. And that's kind of like, but like I said, some people that, like I said, if they choose to go down that route, man, like, who am I to say, more power to you, man. Live your life. But as a coach, man, I've seen there's some kids whose parents have them, they're vegans. Mm-hmm. And their development and the thickness of their bones and their parents don't have this issue is just so much, just from experience, just seeing vegan athletes, there's, especially in that critical development age, it's just not optimal. It just isn't in my opinion.
Well, meat is, especially red meat, is
Oh my God.
This is most nutrient dense food in the planet, I think.
You can survive on red meat alone. It has everything you need to survive. Whereas you can't say that about, and there's no plant on earth that gives you what red meat gives you. So I mean, look, I'm a fan of including beef in your diet. I'm not one to say that. And also people are like, well, what about the saturated fat? You do realize sirloin has less fat than chicken breast. So you can get leaner cuts of meat, still get all those benefits. If you want to be crazy, get the grass-fed stuff, that has, a better fatty acid profile, better overall nutrients. But at the end of the day, as long as you're getting adequate protein and, get your kids to eat some fruit, some veggies, you're in a really good place. And carbohydrate, again, if you're not cutting, carbohydrate are definitely great for fuel. Again, especially the day of the match. Like your body thrives on glucose as an energy source.
Yeah. So let's get in those now. Carbs. Like what would be your stance on carbs? Because obviously they're very important in optimal, athletic performance. But what are good carb sources for these kids to really
go back.
Donuts and chips are really good.
I mean, think about it again. Anything that's not going to weigh you down that your body agrees with, like things like. I mean, even I'm not adverse to bread. Like I'm okay with bread. It's fine. Rice, while devoid of nutrients, it's very
is there better bread out there? I heard sourdough bread's better than regular
sourdough bread. Actually is because the fermentation process. So it's actually really gut healthy. Really, it's slow digesting. So there's a lot to be said. But I mean, they're kids. I mean, I'm not really too worried about that.
Is sourdough a little lower in carbs too?
I mean,
bread.
It's still a carb source, White rice is very hypoallergenic. So if you're looking for a quick source of fuel, if you want to take something simple like old school chicken and rice or beef and rice for, if you have a long day of matches, you can't just survive on, on snacks like peanut butter jelly alone. That's a good option. I'd look at things like fruits, vegetables. Fruits are amazing. Any source of vegetable, of course, ones that don't irritate your stomach. There's something called a FODMAP, which is, basically a food's ability to irritate. There's low FODMAP foods, like I believe steamed carrots are one, where you can eat that. It probably won't, present any issues with gut health. But basically what you'd imagine is a healthy carbohydrate, right? You have your fruits, you have your vegetables, and there's so many options out there. But again, like you're a kid, so have some fun. Like if you want a fun carbohydrate, have a fun carbohydrate. Just make sure that it's within the calories or the food intake that'll keep you at the weight you need to be at. At the end, it's about getting in as much micronutrient dense food, which is all those vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, all that stuff, with as little calories as possible during the season. Right. So the problem with ultra processed, highly palatable foods like Pop-Tarts and pastries and donuts is that it doesn't satiate you, but they're very calorically dense. Whereas I dare you to eat 10 apples. Try. I mean, by the 5th apple, you're like, I'm stuffed. So if you're really trying to hit weight, I think that you need to look at what's going to satiate me or provide me the most fullness for the least amount of calories.
Yeah, that makes that's a great point right there. I never really thought about it.
I've never tried eating 10 apples, but the thought of it just
I eat 2 bananas and I'm stuffed.
It's like, really? Is that it's and also like,
I tell you what though, I can eat like 4 or 5 donuts.
and back to the weight cutting, I think that Perler actually had a great opinion on it. Perler wrestling out of Missouri. And they basically told people to take your body weight and they said, okay, so eat this much. So basically you take 4 meals and you're basically eating 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So let's say if you're 100, let's use 100 pounds because I suck at math. So you'd want to take in 150 grams of protein and you divide that into, 4 meals. So let's see 100, it's about 2.5 chicken breasts. So you take 2.5 chicken breasts, divide it into 4 and eat that as your meals for the day. And you do that for like a weight descent because protein is also, decently it causes diuresis where it's going to help you excrete more water, but you're also getting enough protein to sustain the muscle mass. Again, this is something I wouldn't do for more than 1 to 2 days. But again, like what they're focusing on is we want to retain muscle. So you talk about wrestling programs.
He's back.
A lot of them, like Perler's gotten hip to the fact. In fact, their off season is 3 days of weights and 3 days of wrestling. So the importance of weights and lean muscle mass and getting as strong as possible. And you're seeing all the college we're visiting a college on Monday next week with Thomas. It's a Division III school. Their weight room looks like University of Michigan's football weight room. Like they take their training seriously.
It's crazy to me. Like you had mentioned that there's a coach that I honestly didn't know there's any coaches left that didn't think that weight training during the season was good.
They still exist.
There's not literally not one program out there that even comes to mind that where they would discourage weightlifting.
Yeah.
And actually not even discourage it. I'm talking like not have it implemented in their in-season training program right now. It's just, it's just the studies are there. Like, it's not an option. You have to lift weights twice a week during the season. It's just, that's the option.
Yeah. But you're in it, right? Like you're tapped in to the research and the data, but a lot of these guys, they're just not. Like even doctors aren't tapped into current health data on nutrition. So they know one thing, how to coach wrestling. And that's awesome. But that's where we come in as legacy and as young guns to just supplement their program. That's what coaches have finally started to realize. We don't want, like even strength coaches, like high schools have a strength coach. Okay, great. You're going to handle every single team, every single person on that team, and coach and teach PE. There's not enough hours in the day. So I look at what we do is basically supplemental to what the high schools have. You're not trying to take over the head coaching job at Indy. I'm not trying to make $32,000 a year as a strength coach for a high school. No. It's just not on my books. But you know what? Let us handle your off-season programming. We'll be on site. Like we're on site every day, every 4 days a week in the summer with Paige. We're on site with Centennial Baseball twice a week. Like we'll go and do the work for you, but it's just a supplement because we understand like you can't, as a strength coach or a wrestling coach, there's only so many hours in a day in wrestling practice. You're giving up not only 3 hours a day for practice, but you're giving up all that time to program practice, the tournaments. Like you're looking at a 40-hour work week for a side gig.
Yeah.
That's insane. So
when I was coaching high school level, Andy, I don't know how you do it.
The paperwork.
I don't know. Man, if they had a local club like at the high schools that I was at, I'd been like, thank goodness.
Well, I always tell people around here, like Josh Peck is a national treasure. He's Ravenwood's coach. Yeah. Everybody loves Peck. Yep. Like Peck starts. It's funny. I can say this, but Peck starts out every parent. I didn't go to the one this year. I was traveling. Starts out with a story about, and then he mentions he's autistic, and but he's so meticulous with everything he does. And he's my road trip buddy, because his son and my son. And so we went to Iowa together. We went to Alabama together. Like, he's my roll dog. And the guy is just like, I think he just teaches so he could coach wrestling. And, but again, like Peck's about that life. Like he never stopped. But a lot of these guys, like they want to give back. They want to coach wrestling, but they still want to have a life, and you can't have it if you're a wrestling coach. And it's year round now. Like we're going to tournaments. I don't think I had 1 month this year we weren't in some other state. And now with Preston going to PNL and I'm like, this is, I found a way to make this as expensive as club soccer. I mean, I'm like, cool, wrestling's a cheap sport, like $30, that's nothing. And then it's like, oh, by the way, if your kid's actually okay, it's gonna, you have to travel. I'm like, what?
Yeah, or if he actually wants to be good.
I'm all in. And the one regret I have is not having my kids involved in wrestling at an early age. I think with our grandkids, when my kids have kids, which is coming up, I'm getting old. I think that, the first thing I'm gonna be like, hey, you got to get them in wrestling, like as soon as they're born, like, 6 months old, have them rolling, mat time. No tummy time. We're doing mat time right away. Exactly. Yeah, it's
that tummy time is just parterre.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. How do I get out of this?
Well, let's now, because we hit the proteins and the carbs. I wanted to hit the fats real quick because this is one of the things that not that because we're always going to get sidetracked with wrestling. We got to stay in the nutrition. But this was one of the things I know when I was coming up, and you had brought up like the nutritional practices and the weight cutting way back in the day. And like, here's what my descent plan was. My high school coach took a look at me and said, "Oh, okay, let me see. You weigh 140. You're a 19 pounder."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, really? Yeah. You're going 19, and then so-and-so will be at 26." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's the way it worked." There was no such plan. You just figured out, made it, and then you try to figure it out, and you did. You did the descent plan, and you did the weight cutting practices that all the older kids were doing, and that's just what it went, which were very, very healthy. So also the thing back then was this is like, you want to cut the fats out of your diet, because you're trying to get fat off to get down and all that stuff. And this totally like the things I was teaching as a phys ed teacher and a health coach and a nutrition specialist back in the day with the food pyramid and stuff like that. I'm 52 years old now and I eat totally the opposite. And I'm probably in better shape than I was. So it's crazy. So how is the fats, like, how is that kind of transcended a little bit as far as the diet standpoint?
I love this part of the discussion. So there are two essential nutrients, just two, essential amino acids and essential fatty acids. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Now, I can argue that for athletes, carbohydrate help a lot, but your body can still, I know guys who are ketogenic, who are, Sean Baker, the carnivore diet guy, he's a world champion indoor rower. He hasn't had a carbohydrate in like 20 years. Like he has like cake for his kid's birthday.
He's an animal.
But he's an absolute monster.
No,
yeah, he's actually the nicest guy. I've had him on podcast. He's been on my podcast before. Great guy. But for wrestlers, for explosive athletes, you need carbohydrate, but you also need fat because it's essential, especially as they're growing, especially for young men. Fatty acids and cholesterol is actually a chemical steroid. People don't understand that. Like, we should ban steroids. Cool. What about cholesterol? What? Yeah, it's actually chemistry. If you know chemistry, it's a steroid. It is a chemical steroid.
Cholesterol is really.
Your body needs cholesterol to synthesize hormones. So the last thing I want is a kid on a low-fat diet. I would rather see kids cut carbohydrate out of their diet than fat out of their diet to lose weight. So how do you get fat? Pretty simple. You could choose fattier sources of meat. Again, like, you're going to get a decent amount if you're eating enough protein just by having it. Unless all you're eating is chicken breast and tilapia, you're going to get good fat. But here's another thing. You can always snack on things. Just be mindful because fat, there's more calories per gram than any other macronutrient. So there's 9 calories per gram of fat, whereas for carbohydrate, there is 4 grams. Protein was thought to be 4, but the new data is showing it's actually more like 3.2. So that's new data. Again, like, that's emerging. Again, like, what's funny is science evolves, right? Like, science evolves, and even how we know calories work evolve. But so fat, I would say, add in some peanut butter, add in some, eat some eggs. I mean, there's a good way to get your fat, like eat eggs. If you can afford them, get the pasture raised eggs. It's just better for you, better fatty acid profile. Those are chickens running around eating worms, doing their thing. Getting some, like, avocados are great, but there's nothing wrong with saturated fat. I think there's this whole like argument where the keto guys are like saturated fat are the best, and the vegans are like saturated fat kills you. I'm a 20 to 30% guy, 20 to 30% saturates in your diet. Fill in the rest with monounsaturated and polyunsaturated. Think olive oil, avocados, things like that. So I love fat. But for athletes, I like to see almost a zone-like diet, like a 40-40-30. 40% protein, and then the other 40-30 can interchange. 40 carbs or fat. Like, just make sure you get most of your, you send your protein's gonna, or even a 50-30-20. It depends on your caloric needs, but make sure you hit your protein. So get a gram of protein per pound of body weight. Get around 0.5 grams of fat per pound of body weight. So for a 200-pound guy, that's 200 grams of protein, and that's around 100 grams of fat. And then for the rest, you fill it in with carbohydrate. So always send your protein number 1, fat number 2, carbs, fill it in. So carbs are not, because carbs aren't essential. So we need to look, number 1 is survival first, and then performance. So I also think that's a way to prevent these kids from having hormonal issues. Dude, there's some kids who've had to go on replacement therapy, hormone replacement therapy, because of the damage they've done during wrestling at a young age. Like, hormone replacement therapy is basically giving an aging man like myself, hormones like testosterone, because their body doesn't produce enough. And that's normal. Like your testosterone at the age of 25, every year it tends to go down statistically. You shouldn't have to give it to an 18-year-old because he damaged himself during wrestling. And the problem is once you go on, you really don't come off. So for life, you're sentenced to having to inject just to be normal. That's not cool. And also, what does that do to fertility? Well, it makes it nearly impossible. Not impossible, makes it much harder. And for females as well, like we need to have those fats in place. During the wrestling season, there's a good chance because of the work and everything, a girl might become amenorrheic or lose her period. I'm sure you deal with it a lot. A girl comes up to you, oh my God, coach, I'm dying. I lost my period. That's normal during times of overexertion and stress. But the key is once you resume normalcy, once you get done with the season, the period should come back. And I know this is really weird to talk about, but we need to talk about these things.
It's not weird. It's a human body thing.
Well, nobody talks about it because they're like, well, it's weird to talk about it in front of kids, but they need to know what signs to look for because at the end of the day, a lot of these kids, when they're done wrestling, like, let's be real, wrestling's not like my son, my nephew's going to University of San Diego. His goal is to be in the major leagues and make millions of dollars as a baseball player. Wrestling doesn't have that trajectory. You do your 4 years in college, chances are you're either coaching or you just get funny years for the rest of your life. There's really no like professional wrestling. And the WWE, there's only like 2 wrestlers and Gable Stevenson's back wrestling in college now. Did you see that match?
I know.
He looked good.
Yeah.
He went from being a defensive lineman for the Buffalo Bills to a collegiate.
Dex falls him. I mean, come on. But that dude's at another level, man. We are winning. You're winning Olympic championships, man. It's just
who can beat him?
You know, the Penn State heavyaweight's good. Kirklee's good, but
he's Gable Stevenson.
I know. I'd bet on. I mean,
he's such a beast athlete.
Wyatt Henderson is another one that can get that mix a little bit, but Gable's probably at another level.
He played defensive line just for the hell of it, and he got paid like $3 million. Didn't even make the team.
Oh, I know.
You guys remember Bo Jackson, right?
Oh God, yeah. He's the Bo Jackson.
Really Bo knows, right? Like he's fun.
Even if that's the kind of guy that I could hate him as a person, but as an athlete, I'd be like, God, I love that guy. I want to watch him wrestle. And I don't hate him as a person, by the way. I'm just saying.
Bo Jackson is probably hands down the most incredible athlete.
He ran a 4.1 in the 40.
It's ridiculous.
I don't think anyone's matched it since in football.
It's crazy. You know what he was doing football and baseball was just unbelievable. I mean,
he could have done it. He's just one of those natural athletes.
Whatever he wanted to, you know.
I love that. I love watching that. And Tom Brady, like people hated the Patriots, but I'm like, do you not like Brady sucks? I'm like, hold on, think about this for a second.
Exactly.
You might not like the Patriots, but let's just slow this down.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how this guy has he doesn't have enough fingers for how many Super Bowl rings he has.
I know.
I mean, it's nuts. But yeah, I think getting back to what we're talking about, look, man, and the one thing, let's talk about Tom Brady. Why was he able to play ball at the highest level till he was 45 years old? The guy is a machine when it comes to his training and nutrition.
Yes.
So, you know, I think we can all learn a lot from Tom Brady. And then you look at he ran last night? Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Read about his diet and training regimen. And the average running back in the NFL lasts under 2 years. He's still running people over, stiff arming people into the ground. So if you want to be great at wrestling, if you want to maximize what you're doing, you need to pay attention to the diet and training. And again, we can help you out. Like you want extra wrestling, go to Young Guns. You want to learn how to get bigger, stronger, and faster, come to Legacy. And if you want to learn about diet and training, there's a lot of ways to learn about it. There's a lot of resources online, or you can just ask me. I'm not hard to find.
Right. Well, the thing is, I mean, one of the things that you kind of alluded to was, I mean, out of all the things you talked about with the fats and the proteins, the carbs, and all that type of stuff, and it seems like a very, very, let's just call it a boring diet.
It's boring.
It's boring. I mean, chicken's boring, steak's boring, rice is boring,
boring.
Boring. This is boring.
It depends on their mom, dude. Some of these,
there's nothing like. Like, oh wow, I get to eat a donut. I mean, that's that. But listen, the most successful kids that I've been around from a wrestling perspective, they have a boring diet for pretty much the majority of their whole competitive type of time that they're doing it. I mean, when they're gearing up for a tournament, it's boring. It's the same thing. And the thing about wrestlers is they're very, very, very habitual. I mean, they're a creature of habit. So the more dialed in, the more tuned in you get to your diets from a wrestling perspective. I'm telling you right now, your Mondays are going to be the same. Your Mondays are going to look like your Tuesdays. Your Tuesdays are going to look like your Wednesdays. Your Wednesdays look like Thursdays. You're literally eating the same breakfast every day, the same snacks every day, the same lunch every day, the same tournament food every day. And wow, crazy, but your performance is going to be the same at an elite level the whole time if you're dialing things in. And that's just the way it works.
It's about consistency. I know we've been at our time. I know we had an hour set, but let me just add one thing before we go. The best athletes, and I'm going to talk about Eric Hazard because I love the kid, right? A Page football player.
Absolutely.
Keep your nose clean. All right. And this means maybe avoid parties. And if you go, have a bottle of water in your hand. Alcohol, it's going to do one thing it's going to do, it's going to blunt your fat burning. It's going to decrease your performance for at least 9 hours after you drink, at least, probably more. And it's also going to potentially get you in trouble. Everybody has a cell phone now. So I'm going to, this thing right here is the most dangerous weapon they can use against you. If you're caught with a beer bottle in your hand, kiss that offer goodbye. All right, guys, make the right choices, do the right things. Don't go do something stupid like before a football game, vandalize the opposing team's field. You're putting all this work in. I would hate to see it ruined by a shot of you with a Bud Light in your hand or something stupid, or you get in trouble with the police or the community. Look, just make the right choices. If that means, look, man, parties are great, right? I understand. But if you're at a party, make the right choices. And if you don't need to go, there are other ways you could have fun. And if you know the party is going to have that element of stuff in it, maybe it's best you just don't go. That's where you need to understand that this is a commitment to being the best you. And if you look at the kids we train who are ultra successful, they just love God and they love football or wrestling or whatever sport you play. And they have fun with their friends, but they do it in a smart way that won't impact their future.
Absolutely. That's well said. That's a point that really needs to be discussed, because that's just part of the culture. It's part of the society. So I think that's an important thing there.
Be different. Be different. Being different is everybody go to a party. Everybody can drink, but can everybody win a state title in wrestling?
No, that's the
thing. Can everybody place in regionals? No, that's you.
And listen, I tell kids this over and over again. Your journey if you want to go to the top, that's what you want to do. If you want to go to the top, your journey to the top is going to be lonely and lonely and more lonely and more lonely. The higher levels you get, it's going to be more and more lonely. Not saying you won't have any friends, you're going to be antisocial or anything like that. But at the end of the day, you're going to start seeing people fall off that journey on there because they just don't want to do the same things that are required to be the very, very, very best. And pretty soon you're going to have a bunch of you have a few like-minded kids around you and then doing the same thing, but you're all going to be uber successful.
But you're going to have fun doing it. Exactly. Like Thomas was telling me, like that kid from Overton, Dante. Yeah. I'm like, he's like, yeah, I roomed in the PML. Dude's chill. I love him. I'm like, that's great. And they're like bros now. Like you make friendships that'll last a lifetime. It's amazing. Absolutely. Like the closest, even like at Legacy, like him and Brody Malzoni have this special relationship. Yeah. Because Thomas walks in, calls him fat, and then things kind of go from there. You've met Thomas.
Well, Brody ain't fat no more, boy. I tell you what, you got y'all did a good job with him.
Bro, man, he could weigh 90 pounds. Thomas will still call him fat.
We had Brody on the podcast last week. Man.
I saw it. It was awesome. Yeah. I love that kid, man. Yeah. His dad's so great. It's such a great program they built at Nolensville.
Yeah, Johnny's awesome. He's the man. Andy, I think you had one more question for Mark.
Yeah.
No, I just think just noting that what stuff that we kind of already know, but putting it out there to the young people and maybe some parents that don't know. Like you said, like this, all these things correlate, right? Where we consistently, you have to have your diet in line. You have to have your grades in line. You have to have your training, your weightlifting, your in the room time, and you have to be so consistent on all of that. That's why it funnels and it narrows the ability, the number of people that have the ability to achieve those things. But and the reason is because it's not easy, right? It takes a lot of focus, and you may miss out on that because we're from Tennessee, that party in the field. Okay. I'm
from LA.
They were burning tires back in the day. They don't do that. Well, I hope they don't do that. Anyways, but like you might miss this social thing because you're pushing for a goal in life And I think that's what helps our kids in general achieve more outside of here. And other people, they want former wrestlers working for them, because they know about our work ethic. But I have a quick question for you too on the dietary stuff, because I know I'm going to ask the question that every kid asks. What do I eat for breakfast? What are some examples of if you could pop in like a breakfast, lunch, dinner, snackies, just an easy.
Well, it depends what they like, right? Like for breakfast, like a lot of times make a protein shake, put a banana, a couple scoops of protein powder, around 30 to 50 grams of protein, throw some peanut butter, a couple tablespoons of peanut butter, boom, you have breakfast. If you like cooking, if you have time for that, a lot of kids don't like taking time. They'd rather sleep more. Then eggs, toast, something like that, something simple. Lunch, pack a sandwich, turkey sandwich. Turkey, a couple pieces of bread. It depends what they want to do with their life. Now, some kids might need to pack 2 or 3. With my kids, we have those thermoses that keep things warm. We'll put like chicken and rice, beef and rice, put some sauce, some sugar-free barbecue sauce on it. Preston likes having those. It's delicious. It's a warm meal. 2 or 3 of those. Sometimes like Eric Hazard and Presley Cozart at Page, like they have 3 containers they bring with them to school because they're football players. They're big. They need to be big.
It takes a lot of food to fuel that person, right? Pre-training,
pre-wrestling practice, maybe have some protein, like a protein shake or one of those core powers, maybe a protein bar, one that agrees with your stomach. And have some dried fruit or a simple carb source with it. Maybe have a banana, get your lift in. After training, if you're going to eat right away, go home, have dinner, go to bed. I mean, it just depends on the schedule. But yeah, what we'll do is we'll have the kids measure out 3 meals or 4 meals worth of meat. So like, for example, Presley Cozart, who came back from the ACL tear, he was doing 32 ounces of beef and 8 cups of rice. He'd heat it all up, put it in 4 separate containers, and that'd be his meals throughout the day. He still does it. So there's so many ways around it. Depends how stringent you want to be. But, for those guys, who have to be big and powerful and they're not worried about making weight and they burn a lot of calories. Yeah, I'm going to have them take 3-4 meals to school and they're going to eat that. And if they don't eat it, they'll just eat it after school. And that's the baseline. So I'll set that as the baseline. Whatever else they eat is bonus. But for wrestling, that gets them all their protein they need, gets them the carbs. The beef has plenty of fat in it. And Presley's grandfather owns a cow farm, with so he's got all the beef he can eat. So we're good to go.
Yeah. I just, how these kids ask these questions like that. It does.
Just be prepared. Be prepared. Look, man, we were coaching a Centennial last Friday and I smell what was cooking in the cafeteria. Don't eat that. Bring your food, pack your food. Don't just be prepared. Always have a meal with you. Be prepared. Yep. Do not get caught with your pants down where you're stuck having to eat Waldo's or some one of those things. Bring your meals with you. And that sounds weird, but you're weird. You're in a sport that is going to disfigure your ears, and you're okay with that. People already know you're weird.
That's the thing, especially in the season. In season, if you're not bringing your lunch and you're not bringing your food, you're eating out of the school's cafeteria. I'm just telling you, sorry, you just don't want to. You don't want it bad enough. You don't want to compete at the highest level you can possibly compete at. You just don't. It doesn't mean that much to you. It just doesn't.
I actually think that this is probably the biggest for my wrestling career, because back in the day, I wrestled 103 pounds and was in soccer season roughly at 116.
Yeah.
And so, it's a hard thing. I think what I would say is one of the hardest things of wrestling is if you are maintaining your diet like that, because, lean muscle mass, leaner bodies, you're stronger, the ratio, whatever. But I think it's one of the hardest tasks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Is catering that, like self-control over food because of the way our bodies and our brains work. So I'm just encouraging the kids to do that more. And I love that you came on here today talking about this stuff and you're saying all the stuff that we try to preach to them about consistency and, you got to treat it like a machine, right?
Yeah. And these kids can reach out to me. I'm not hard. If they go on my Instagram at Marc Lobliner, they could DM me there. Awesome. My email is marc, M-A-R-C @tigerfitness.com. I'm here to help. Like I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing the other stuff for the money, but this I'm not doing.
The thing about it is Tiger Fitness is MTS brand and all those. If you're looking at supplements, tell you what, don't go anywhere else. That's the spot. That's the place. Those are the supplements right there.
I appreciate that. And just, and of course, first session's free. If you want to give Legacy a shot, that's great. If not, man, I'll probably see everybody watching this who's wrestling at one of the tournaments. I'll be there, obviously, with my son, and we'll be at a few Nolensville tournaments without my son because we coached them. And yeah, it's really been an honor to be on here, guys.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And like I said, and guys, Mark is one of the most generous people out there. I'm just going to tell you, especially in this fitness space. So when he says reach out to him, you have a question. I mean,
please do.
Because you might regret that, Mark.
Because he's gonna answer you. I mean, he's just that kind of person.
It's better than the people in my other life. Trust me.
Right.
I can't trust me. Way better.
Yeah.
Marc Lobliner, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your expertise in these subject areas, and I just love talking to you all the time. So I'm
likewise, guys. And if you need anything else, I'll be glad to come on again if there's any questions that we need to clarify.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
All right, have a great one, guys. Thank you.
Whoa. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I left it. I didn't leave the stage. So that was awesome, huh?
That was great. I love
it all. I think we went over a little bit, 25 minutes, but that's okay though. I mean, I think this stuff's important. And yeah, I mean, I told everybody in the social media posts, listen, this is a can't miss episode. Whether
I'm really
school or whatever, kids, parents, and coaches, all of them. I think all of them need to understand the buy-in it takes to be an elite level wrestler. It takes a tremendous amount of buy-in.
I think this is where our sport on the high school level, middle school now, like we were talking about, just it's year round now. Like whenever I was in high school, of course, Tennessee, we aren't Pennsylvania, so we weren't, like rare and like as heavy at it as a whole as other states might have been. But now, like everybody's doing it year round. And I think the biggest piece that everybody needs is education on stuff like this, because it's like taking on a coaching job. Like it's not just coaching, right? Because you're like kind of a therapist and a nutritionist and a CEO and like all these things. But I'm just excited for further education of the parents and athletes, because I know we're not the only people in our rooms saying these things to our kids. And for the folks that, like he said, sometimes you've got a coach that, that's a person this isn't their background, and there's nothing wrong with that. There isn't anything wrong with that. For me, anytime I don't know about a particular thing in life, I go find someone who does, right? So today that got delivered, and he's also offered himself as a resource as well, which is super kind. And
that's the best. He's the best.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Awesome. And again, it's not just an aimless plug just because it's a friend of mine, but his supplements are fantastic. They are. It tastes great.
I'm gonna write them down when we get done and check them out.
Like I said, it's this whole. But he's a great person. Cares about kids and wants to see kids better. Wants to see society better. So it's great stuff. Well, there we go, Andi. That's it. Great podcast today. Great guest. Great information. Hopefully everybody gets something out of it. I know you got to run to another meeting, so we'll get you out here and get everybody geared in towards Thanksgiving. Now there's some things in that Thanksgiving meal plan that may not be ideal. So there we go. But
takeaways for Thanksgiving.
Always find good stuff in the portions. Always good find stuff.
Portion girl, just choose the smaller plate. You can fill it up. Just choose the smaller.
Your turkeys, your potatoes, and stuff like that.
Protein.
So, all right. Well, next week we'll get back on, have another great guest on here or two. We'll see what happens with the tournament this weekend. But for now, thank you everyone for joining in. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Enjoy your time with friends and family, and we will see you next week. So thanks so much.
Bye, guys.